Okay, it is 8:30, and it's Tuesday the 14th of August, and welcome to week 2 of Introduction to Criminal Law, and hope you are coming along here and uh, keeping up with the assignments that that were due on last Sunday. There are other assignments that are going to be due this week on Sunday the 19th, and I'm going to take some time and go over those things, and then I'm going to let you go. So we won't be, hopefully not too long tonight. So let's start out by sharing my screen. Let's share this. Okay. So anyway, on this side, you see, let's move this up a little. Okay. On this side, you see the information that I went over with you in the open house, which I won't go over, but it's on the course homepage the whole quarter. And then reminding you of our lectures that are taking place now on Tuesday nights, beginning tonight, and for the next 4 weeks after this, 8:30 to 9:30 on Tuesday nights. And the recording is down below. This is the one of the open house. After this is over, I will record week 2 lecture and have the link there as well. Okay, so let's go and take a look at our week 2 announcement. Module 2, Crime Against Property. And you would read chapters 3, 4, and 12 of the textbook, A Brief Introduction to Criminal Law. And we're going to go over these activities. What are crimes against property, larceny, robbery, or burglary? We're going to talk about that. Misappropriation, trespassing, vandalism, and then key terms for practice. I'll not do that, but I'll remind you again. These practice things are really helpful. If you looked at the open house, you understand what I'm talking about. Which crime against property is a question, and then there is a practice quiz as well. Your assignments for the week: discussion assignment, robbery, burglary, and theft, which some of you have already provided answers. Some I've responded to, but I will be providing you with some discussion about clarifying some of the things. Since some of the posts you posted, you might decide you want to change after that, but you can't change them. But at any rate, you want to make sure that you have that information. And then finally, your sole written assignment for the week is the identity theft problem. And we're going to go over that in a few minutes because, as you already know, the rubric is the key to getting that done. And we're going to comment. I'm going to supply you with information regarding that as well. So I gave you my motto. I explained it last week. You know the details on it. You know that I take that seriously because of what I shared with you. So let's get right into looking at our course calendar. The calendar tells you what assignments were due this week, when they are due. So starting with Monday, your reading assignment, you click on that. Tells you the same thing that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. But there it is there too. These are just, I have information in more than one place for you. Your initial post, robbery, burglary, and theft. Then, of course, the live lecture that's taking place. And then your reply post that's due on Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. Then your written assignment, which we're going to discuss when we get to the rubric, the identity theft problem. That's a big problem taking place today. And then after that, then we'll be back with next week. So that's it for this week in that. So now let's take a look at the module and see what we have here. Again, let's start out by repeating what the assignments are. And here they are. Discussion post. All right. And then your initial post. There is a rubric in here. And you want to make sure that you look at that rubric. It tells you the possible points, tells you when the assignment is due. So you got to make sure that you look at the rubric to satisfy all the requirements. Remember this about this particular assignment, though. It is not, it's a part 1 and a part 2. So you want to make sure that you use that template down there. There's a template to help you with part 2. But you want to make sure you answer these questions. It says a minimum of 2 pages, not counting the reference page. Now remember, the 2 pages is not part 2. Part 2 has a 1-page flyer. So basically it's 3 pages. So it's the flyer and then 2 pages dealing with the following issues. And then you can see clarification of that by opening up the rubric, which is what I use for grading. And it tells you what you need to do for part 1. Okay. And then tells you what APA and all of that for part 1. So that's for 20 points. And then you get to, whoops, let's go back to the rubric. Okay, then you get down here, create the flyer for the rest of your points there. I think that's right. Is that 15, 20, 25? Oh, okay. So you get 25 points for this part. And then you get the 15 points for creating the correct flyer. Okay, minimum 1-page length. And so you want to make sure you satisfy and read these, because when I grade you, I'm going to grade you accordingly. Very, very, very important. So those are the assignments for the week. Let's go back to Module 2. And let's look at the lesson content. Okay. So now, let's see what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about crimes. Let me move this up some. Move this just a little bit there. There we go. All right. So we're talking about crimes against property, misappropriation, the difference between trespassing and burglary, and the difference between robbery, strong arm, or either robbery or armed robbery and burglary. So, again, these are your assignments. So let's get down here. So let's talk about this. So the law is pretty clear. There are certain elements that are necessary in order to be charged with these crimes. Crimes against property use the term larceny. And do you know what larceny is today? What we use for larceny today? Any of you, you can type in the chat box. I'll be able to see it. What is larceny called today, generally? It's another word for larceny. There we go. That's it. Take the question mark off. That's it. Good point. Good point, Amy. Yes, it is theft. Taking the property from another with intent to permanently deprive that individual. Those are the elements there. Now, borrowing is not the same as larceny. But remember, borrowing has to come with the understanding of the party who gives it. Now, did you not know that you can, for example, rent a car, and if the car is due back on Friday, and after Friday you haven't turned it in, technically, the days after that, you could be charged with theft, unless there are conditions in the agreement to extend it. And so the key thing is that it is believed in the minds of the person that that person is not going to get that property back. You can even come back and say, oh, I intended on returning it. The bottom line is that it takes a sum total of circumstances. And sometimes there are errors and mistakes, stuff like that. But be aware of the fact that larceny in itself is very simple theft. And in the normal course, then an individual is guilty of theft. So if they take the property of another, now, you can be convicted of theft, which is also called larceny. Burglary. Now, let's talk about burglary. Burglary used to be taking the property from the home of another at nighttime with intent to permanently deprive that person. So if you break and enter or into a home, now it's businesses, then you committed burglary. Now, what has happened in modern law is burglary no longer requires it have to be in nighttime. Burglary can happen 24/7. So the question is, in order to be found guilty of burglary, if you, for example, have a situation where you see something on somebody's porch, on their porch, is that burglary? Would you consider that burglary? Yes, it is. Yes, because you have violated the plane of that individual. You have done it. Now, if it's on the sidewalk and that person just sat on the sidewalk and you took it, then that's not burglary, that's theft. But if it's beyond the fence, the private area, or as we used to say in the old days, the curtilage. The curtilage is an invisible line of demarcation where that person has an expectation that that's their property, that's where they live. So then if you take it, it's burglary. Now, the question is, if you don't go into the property, but you reach over the fence, and then you take it, is that still burglary? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Absolutely. And you know where I'm going with that one. If you read your discussion post. Some people got faked out by that one there because they literally interpreted it meaning that your body had to go over. Any extension of your body, a stick or anything that you use, a rope, then you have, so that's burglary. Robbery. Okay, here's a question. If you walk up to me and then you snatch something from me, off of me, and then you take off running, is that burglary? I mean, is that robbery? Brandon says yes. Amy, what do you think? Okay. Or threat or put that person in fear of injury. So I'll go back again to ask the question. If they snatch it, are they doing it by force? Are they using force? So then, okay, so then would you think that that person might have some apprehensions or fear about what happened to them? Would they be placed in a position where they might fear what happened to them? What about it? Is that true? Yes. The answer is yes. So that would be robbery. Now, a lot of times people think that you have to produce a weapon. Let me tell you something. That's called armed robbery. But if you do what I said earlier, that's just robbery, but it's still robbery. So if you use a bat and you threaten to hit that person with that bat if they don't give you the purse, is that armed robbery? Yes. How about if you're going to hit them with a piece of thread? Is that armed robbery? Okay. So the piece of thread, if it's perceived as something that might create that person and put them in apprehension, it can be. So yeah, you're both right. And but the general robberies we know are not with thread. They're usually with guns, knives, or maybe something like that. How about raising your shoe to hit somebody? If you don't give me that bag, I'm going to hit you with this shoe. Is that armed robbery? It is. And if you have big feet like some of these kids today, that's 13s, and you raise it up and hit them, I say assault with a deadly weapon, but 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 you get the point. So you're both right. You're both right. So you got the elements of yeah, yeah. The whole thing in a nutshell is that. Um, so anyway, I put my purse down, and I don't carry a purse. Sometimes I have my wife's purse, but I'm not like LeBron. Some of you might not even know what I'm talking about if I say it like LeBron uh, with his purse. Those of you who saw it, it was in some media. $41,000. Uh, he said it was a man bag. Well, as a purse. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But but anyway, let's say he put that down and you took that while he was sitting next to it, turned his head and looked, and you ran. What could you be charged with? Burglary? If he just sat it down next to him? Oh, okay. That's okay. No. It would be theft. On the other hand, if well, that's theft. That's the same as theft. Larceny is synonymous with theft, so it's the same thing. But anyway, the point I'm saying to you is that. So now this is a $41,000 purse, and you take it. Um, that's what we consider as grand theft, because the more the value is, and you'll look at many statutes, and we start depending on what the value of the property. And grand theft is considered as a felony, which could send you to jail, as I have shared before, for over a year and a day. But if it's a misdemeanor, if the value is lower, like if it's a purse from Dollar Tree, Dollar General, one of those places where you paid $1, or if it's a knockoff Louis Vuitton or something like that, or some other kind of Versace, and it's a knockoff. In that situation there, it's going to be probably theft because it's not very valuable. So anyway, so you get the idea. You get the idea. Misappropriation. Misappropriation means that it's like embezzlement. It's the funds or property or whatever it is was intended for use for doing one thing, and then you use it for another. Like for example, someone entrusts you with the money to invest, and then you convert it to your own use and benefit, thus depriving them of it. That could be, yeah, that could be theft, but it is misappropriation because it's appropriation means appropriate. So mis means not appropriate. So that's what it means, not appropriate. Literally, taking the word apart means not using it appropriately. So that's a crime against property. Trespassing, very simply, this is that you go unwanted onto someone's property, and you know. So, do you have to have a sign that says no trespassing in order for a person to be guilty of trespassing? That's right. That's right. You don't have to have a sign. Oh, I didn't see this. The sign didn't say no trespassing. What sign? You. This is my property. You came on it. You know. I didn't invite you on it. And actually, you can get a person can run into a problem where they can end up getting shot in some jurisdictions just for trespassing in those kind of situations. Vandalism, yeah, that's very simple, just destroying someone's property, and so that's what that is. So anyway, jurisdictions vary across the country about what they are, but these are the general crimes against property. Um, what's carjacking? I know what it is. I mean, but what we've been talking about? What is it? Which one does it fit in of these things? Yep. And actually, we go as far as to say, yeah, there we go. There you go. It elevates because of the value to grand theft. So yeah, but it's still grand theft auto. There's a game that they have on. I don't even play video games. It's called Grand Theft Auto, that kind of thing. But the point of the matter is that yes, and so those are very, 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 very serious. Okay, so we're not going to get into some other questions about that. Okay. So anyway, that's pretty much what we deal with crimes against property. It's a thumbnail sketch of it. And larceny, we've already covered that, so I'm not gonna go over that anymore. Vehicle theft, we kind of did that in the little scenario here, where it just ends up taking the car, the bus, the mode of transportation. So would you say that taking a bike, I'm not talking about a motorbike, a motorcycle, of course, that's right there. Would you say taking a regular bike, would that be vehicle theft, or would that just be theft? I would agree. I would agree. I would agree with you 100%. Of course, though, if it was a bike that had, stuff on it that made it worth a whole lot of money, you still would have theft, but then you might have, based on the value, elevated it to grand theft. So, okay, let's take a brief look at joyriding. You almost know what that is. Somebody just takes it with intent to permanently deprive the owner. Is that a felony? Well, yes, and so that's without consent. But joyriding is when a person just takes the car without the consent, but they don't want to keep it permanently. But it's also considered as unauthorized use. I would call it misappropriation in terms of what we talk about in our little scenario that we kind of talked about those demonstration or points that could be considered as crimes against property. And then it talks about a specific state law. Our state statutes, of course, may tailor it differently. Like Ohio says prohibits the unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. If the vehicle is returned within 48 hours, the offense is a misdemeanor offense, not a felony. In such cases, there is a lack of intent. So that was what I was talking about earlier. But it depends on the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction, and so we try to explain to people, I as a lawyer know Illinois law. If I'm going to see what's happening in your state, I'd go look at your statutes. Yep. But it depends on your state. Like I said, I would go look at your state and see what your state says is the meaning of that. I've represented people in other jurisdictions, and then when I did, I went and looked and saw what their law. Carjacking, we already kind of talked about that. But and now our state, for example, has vehicular hijacking prohibits a person from knowingly taking a motor vehicle from the person or in the immediate presence of another by the use of force or imminent use of force, such as like when you're pumping your gas, or either like this fella here, pulls a gun and get out your car, and that time. It's like robbery in most jurisdictions because it's one of those where that person is placed in fear and so forth. Then I'm not gonna go into references. So robbery or burglary, we already talked about that. We've exhausted that. So I'm not going to go into that unless you have some questions that I haven't really answered regarding burglary and robbery. Do you have any? Okay. Okay. Just like I said earlier, at common law, burglary was intended to a home and occurred in nighttime. But today, as I said, it can occur in a house, a business vehicle, and so forth and so on. A trailer. You live in a trailer. That's it. So that kind of thing. All right. A vehicle. When I first heard that one, I had to think about that. I said, does the person live in it? Well, the point of the matter is that that's that person's private area. If they have their windows down and you reach in, same kind of thing that we talked about earlier. So that could be burglary. Very interesting point, but it works like that. So robbery can be described as I said earlier, you have armed robbery, that's when a weapon. Strong armed robbery is when you use not only a weapon, but you also demonstrate the intent to do bodily harm. Home invasion robbery is when you actually force yourself into a house and people are present. Burglary, remember, no one has to be there. Okay? So I'm not going to click on that because I just told you. Misappropriation, we've talked about that. I said it was embezzlement, and I already answered that, entrusted. Fraud, such as, identity theft or credit card fraud, or either forgery. I've been the victim of credit card fraud, especially with my debit card, where I had a situation where a person, I still had my card, but they ended up using my card number and charged in another jurisdiction. That just happened to my daughter. And the way that happens is because on the internet. And what happened to us was really we went to a restaurant and we gave the waiter, as you customarily do, your card to make your payment. And then they take it and, they swipe it and bring you back your receipt. Well, this particular individual, as we found out later, was part of a ring, and he had one of those little drives, and he slid it. You know what I'm talking about, where it slides and it takes your information, gives you back your card. You don't know, and then they send it by computer to someone else, and then they make a fake card and use it. So those kind of things, and so we're kind of stuck with that kind of stuff now because the internet is a good thing. but it is also something that you have to be very, very careful about. Here's one here: theft by fraud offenses encompass various acts, from defrauding a hotel or innkeeper, that's cheating them out of what what you're supposed to be paying them, taking off, jumping out of an Uber or a taxi without paying, those kind of things. Uh, Not paying for food received at a restaurant. I've seen that happen. Also, let me tell you one too, and it's actual theft. And I actually represented a young girl years and years ago who got caught in this, but she wasn't guilty, but the girls who were with her. They went to the store and they were buying and shopping, and they had money, and they picked up the item, and item, I'm just hypothetically give you a number, that the item says it was marked at $10. So they decide they find something and put it on there for $5. Now, and I know now that, scanning is different now. Okay, this was before they really got really sophisticated with scanning. Everything has a code now. So, and you go to Walmart or any store you go to, that happens. But this was before that. And so those individuals paid $5, and then they were caught on camera in the store, and then they were arrested and charged with theft by deception. Also, they used fraud as a term. But the point of the matter is that person, those kids, they were misdemeanors because of the amount. But that's a misappropriation of property because you're not paying the full value on it. Okay. So it's different when, for example, like my wife, she's good at retail. She'll go to the store and she'll say, I picked that up off the shelf and it said this price, and then you hit the thing on the computer and it has a higher price, and then you go back and you take the manager or somebody back there and they see that the stuff is all stacked up under that. Well, under the Consumer Act, they have to give it to you, and they generally will. I had a situation where I was buying a tablet, and I was trying to get the the coverage for it, and under the tablet they had the coverage as $9.95. When I got up there, they said, "Oh no, the coverage is $19.95." They said it used to be $9.95. I said, "No, I don't care what it used to be. It's still on there. I'm relying on that." I started doing my lawyer talk. I didn't pronounce I was a lawyer, but they could probably tell. And I said, so my expectation is that as a consumer is to rely on the prices that you posted. So the manager came in, okay. So he said, give him the discount. Go back there and change that sign. And so after that, but, those are different kind of scenarios there. Okay, forgery. We know what that is, changing, on their $10 and put an extra zero on the left side of the dot. That makes it 100. And so, but making, altering, or endorsing any written instrument, such as to change how it's supposed to operate and where we're supposed to go to. Welfare fraud. Yeah, well, you know what that is. That's basically saying you need welfare, and you actually, driving a Lexus or either a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce around, have you ever, I've seen this in movies, but for real, there are people that will, and I've seen this on Facebook too, people who have actually demonstrated, shown it. People who are out in the street begging, and they're out there begging, and they have their clothes. They're all, they look like they're street people, and they live out there. And people are giving them money and so forth and so on. And then somewhere along the line, people follow them or see them later or follow them wherever they're going. Maybe they see the house they live in, but they see the car that they get on, and they look up, and that person got a luxury car. Is that person guilty of fraud? Yes or no? Amy said no. Brandon, what'd you say? I didn't. It went too quick. I didn't get a chance to see it. What did you say? Yes. The answer is yes, because it's deception, and it's actually misrepresentation, and it is theft. Because when you gave on the belief that that individual was a destitute individual, but that's a scheme, that's a sham, and they can go to jail for that. So the answer is yes, yes, that fits within the. Well, they're voluntarily giving, but you got to remember this: they're voluntarily giving, but they're relying on all the surrounding circumstances. And now, if that person was standing in front of their Rolls Royce, you know, and you saw them get in their car, get out of the car, and then they stand out there and they're doing that, and you end up giving, and that's their car. No, I still think they're not giving incomplete by voluntarily completely. I think as a prosecutor, a case could be made that they committed fraud on the public because of the fact that they are carrying themselves in such a fashion that they appear to be destitute, just like welfare or some other situation, but they're not. Okay, that's so. I'd say that is you could be charged with a criminal act there, and probably in a lot of jurisdictions you might even have that on the books. But I think an argument could be made by a lawyer that, and then I could see a defense attorney like I was presenting that point that you made that, well, the people did it on their own. Yeah, but then the public should not be misled, should I say, and that's what really happened. So, you know, as we said in law school, some say yes, some say no. That's our way in law school of saying it goes either way. But I would think that was the case. So anyway, here's one that just happened here. One of my friends, the pastor was telling me, and we were both pastors, and we use the same building for services. But he was telling me that in his offering, he got two fake $20 bills, and he didn't know who it was. But that person was committing fraud. Would you agree? I mean, I know they were using counterfeiting, but weren't they also committing fraud? Mm-hmm. And then he told me about another scenario where somebody that he knew was a longtime neighbor, and he didn't use the word friend, I guess because of what I'm getting ready to tell you. He said that he'd known him a long time, and he loaned him $100. So the person said to him, "Here's $100, but I can only give you 40. Could you give me back 60?" So having been in law enforcement, I said, "Ups, there's a dead cat on the line," as my wife would say. Something's up. Something's not smelling right about this one. Okay, so how come he gave him the $60? My friend did, and he would say, he took his money to the bank, and the bank says, "Pastor," because he's a pastor too, but he was talking about his neighbor. This is phony. He said, "What?" So he went back to the guy, and he told him, "You owe me 100 still. You don't owe me 60." So he said, I gave you 100. He said, no, that was no good. He said, well, somebody gave it to me. Doesn't matter. The law is passing it, whether you knowingly do it or not. So that kind of thing. But anyway, since we're talking about this kind of stuff, that fits within the realm of that. Identity theft. We already know that this is a big, big, big thing, and that based on the internet, it's made it much easier, as I was talking about a few minutes ago. I know that people who have had their Social Security numbers, driver's license numbers, and all of that stuff appropriated, and people have used that to apply for credit. My sister, one of my sisters, had a put in quotes, dear friend, who moved to California, and when she got to California, she ended up having my sister's information because she was so close to her, and was opening up accounts. And so anyway, they traced it back to her, and it took 5 years to get that straightened up on her credit. It was just unbelievable. Now it's kind of different, but yet it's still problematic. So what's the deal here? You have to guard your identity. What do you do with bills and papers? Do you throw them in the garbage can? Do you just throw them in the garbage? Shred. No. Yeah. And since one, Brady, you said no, why not? That's nasty, stinking garbage. There's stinky fish in there. It's rotten food in there. Why not just throw it in there? Yeah. What we call those people? Anybody, either of you know? Steal it from the garbage? No, there's a specific name we call them, and you may have heard it. You may not have heard it. Either of you know? Yeah, there we go. A dumpster diver. And it makes sense. I mean, do you not know? See, let me tell you something, guys. You put your garbage out on the curb now, where at least, well, where we live now, we don't have to do that, but we can. We have a valet that comes around and picks up the garbage in the complex that we live in, the condo, and so we put them out, and when we put it out, I tell my boys, I says, hey, look, no, that ain't gonna work. So I said, you go ahead and take it to the compactor. But anyway, the best practice is to shred it. And then here's something else you don't do. And I've been guilty of it, but I thought about it. I said, no, I'm not doing that no more. You get a card and you cut it up. You cut it up in a whole bunch of little pieces. Then you throw it in the garbage can. That's dangerous. Do you know why? Yep, like Humpty Dumpty. Exactly. Yep, it can be put back together again. It may be meticulous, but that there are people who've done that. Yep, that's it. But what I do is I put a piece in here and a little piece there, and then I also cut the numbers and all kind of things. You gotta think about it. We're in times now where people can, like I said, they can get your identity pretty easily. And so most states now have state laws. The federal government has laws. Talks about here, for example, it says identity theft occurs in many ways with other criminal offenses. For example, a burglar can obtain both identifying information and documents by stealing a wallet, which can be used to commit identity theft. They don't even have to do that. They can break into your house and steal some of your mail. Do you ever get these things in the mail? and I know you do. I get these all the time. Would you like to apply? You apply for this credit card, or either take out this loan at this company, and so forth. So you get those in the mail, guys. It's called junk mail to me. Yes, all the time. You have to be careful about that, because if you don't destroy those, someone can fill it in, change the address on there, and then they will send that information to that new address. They won't even check. It's really terrible. They don't even use the credit reports to check to see or any of those kind of things. So they won't call anything. So, and then next thing you know, you got it on there. So what you have to end up doing is putting a credit freeze on your credit, and it creates all kind of inconveniences for you. So anyway, the bottom line is identity theft is a big thing, and it's happening all too frequently. And then there's some great articles at the end here. Using the internet, fighting identity theft, sheriffs and deputies that provide information, financial fitness, identity, protecting your identity, doing certain things. Like for example, me, I got this thing right here. Let me show it to you. This right here in my hand. This is my cell phone. On here I have apps that tie directly to my bank and to my credit cards themselves. I go in those with my passwords that I have scrambled and changed and all kinds of stuff in there. Anyway, I go in there and I check not once a week, not twice a week, but 3 or 4 times a day. I usually have the habit of checking it early in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. I do that all the time. And then I will quickly call my credit card people, let them know my debit card, the bank, and those kinds of things. So you have to be smart these days, and you have to know that these people are up at night while you're sleeping, figuring out ways to get your stuff. Credit card fraud, okay, we kind of hit on that. I mean, it's amazing. Stealing, and I said in here, credit card offers received via mail. Completing the credit card offer in the victim's name. In other instances, credit card fraud is more complex. Like what I just told you a little while ago. They use skimmers. That's what happened with me, where my wife and I went shopping. Went to a restaurant to eat, and we gave the guy our card, and he took the card and brought it back. And the next day or two, I went to try to use my card, not hers, because we both had the same account with different debit card numbers, and they froze mine. Found out that somebody had tried to feed 300 people at least. It had to be with this big bill at Panera Bread. And then they bought a refrigerator at Lowe's, and they had a party over the weekend at a hotel in Ohio. And my bank asked me, was I in Ohio? I said I was not. And sure enough, they found out what had happened. It was a ring, and it was about $300,000 ring, and we were caught up in it. So the guy had a skimmer where when he took my card, he swiped it and then had that information, and then jump drive or something, whatever he did, hooked it up to a computer, and they made counterfeit cards, just like what it's saying here. So been there, done that. So anyway, the law is trying to fix it, but you also have to be smart. Trespassing and vandalism. Trespassing, we already talked about. You don't have to have a sign. So you just have to, areas that are private or restricted, and those kinds of things people do. Vandalism, damage to property, intentional damage, without consent, property of another. Those are the common elements of criminal damage. Intentionally damaging without consent. you told me I could tear that up. Yeah, but you had a gun out. you you had a you had a gun, or either you were wearing a gun. Uh, you know, that's not consent. Okay, we have to say we say in the law business it has to be willingly, intelligently, and knowingly. So those kind of things. So criminal damage to property occurs when the property of another is intentionally damaged, and so all of these different things occur. Uh, so this one was interesting. When I read this before, when I taught this class, keeping these elements in mind, it's important to note that a person cannot be criminally charged for criminal damage to property if they intentionally damage their own property. Okay? Now, what if it's joint property? Probably it results in not a criminal charge, but probably a civil suit. Then they talk about, for example, if a woman becomes angry with her boyfriend, went out to the driveway, stood on the hood of her car, and threw a brick through the windshield, she couldn't be prosecuted for criminal damage to property. So, there we go, right there. Now, let me read that again. If the woman became angry with her boyfriend and went out to the driveway and stood on the hood of her, make sure you get that, her new car, and threw a brick through the windshield. But if she went out on the driveway and threw a brick through his car, that whole thing changes. Take the her out and put his in there, and then there we go. So let me see. I bought a car for me, and I financed it, and my wife, she drives another car, but they're both in my name, and she decides to throw a brick through her car. Chances are, well, that's a domestic issue, but let's aside from that, it gets kind of murky when the title of the car is in somebody else's name. But anyway, you get the drift. The idea is your own property is, that's your business. That's your loss. That's your loss. Her action may cause a breach of peace or consider disorderly, but not criminal damage to property. Okay. All right. Key terms. I'm not going to go over this. I highly, 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 highly recommend, as I last week. Did you guys look at the week 1 lecture or the open house, which is the same thing? Okay. That's a trick question, because if you said no, then yeah, I recall that. If you said no, then I'm gonna say, well, how'd you get the key word? I'll go back. Then you in. I said, uh-oh, I shot myself in the foot. I done a bad thing. My students don't do that, but anyway. So key terms here, you want to make sure you use these. I said this last week, and I want you to encourage them, because when you click on key terms, it opens up another window. And then use the flashcards. That is the one, I know that one works, and then that's the best one anyway. So then you have to run Adobe Flash, which is okay if you don't. And then I just hit allow, and it's there, because it's in Firefox. Use Firefox a lot. Our systems are more friendly with Firefox. Okay, similar to armed robbery, except the act or robbery is committed without a weapon. Rather, the robbery is committed by physical force. What is that? What do you call that? What is it? Okay. Breda says theft. It's robbery. Strong armed robbery. I mean, but it's robbery. It is robbery. It's not theft. Remember, the key thing was taking it, by force. All right. Yep. That's what we lawyers do. We good for that. So throw little scenarios at you. Okay, let's do one more and then the unlawful use of force, threatened use of force, or fear directed at an automobile operator or occupant, which compels them to relinquish their vehicle to the offender. What is that? In the common term that you might be familiar with right now. Okay. Carjacking or grand theft auto fit. Not burglary. Remember, I didn't say they took anything. They forced them out of the car. The person was there. Okay, taking some stuff out of somebody's car, then we got burglary. See how you can get tricked? Okay. One, I like these things. The intentional and unlawful taking of the property of another without force, with the intent to permanently deprive the owner of the property, survey says, okay. Ding-a-ling-a-ling, So anyway, those are nice. So I'm going to stop that. So you want to use those because they help you into what you do. And then I'm back down here. We're about done here. Okay, so then for practice, in your readings, you learn the difference between armed robbery, strong armed robbery, theft. In this activity, you would have an opportunity to practice differentiating these terms in specific scenarios. Like, for example, you go the same thing, and then you open up another window, and bam. Practice for that. So start the activity. A 17-year-old boy is walking home from school and is approached by two suspects. The suspects shoved him onto the ground to take his wallet. What type of crime is this? Armed robbery, theft, burglary, or strong armed robbery? Okay. Breda says armed robbery. What do you say, Amy? You say armed robbery. I say this. See? Strength. Remember, strong armed. Strong armed because physical force was used. See how you can, that's why you have to think of, we lawyers are good for that. Not if any element is missing, it can change. Yeah. So now you get my point. Okay. As we say in the law business at the end of the case, I rest my case. Let's do one more. Okay. A 14-year-old left her bicycle outside on the lawn. In the morning, the bicycle is missing, and the family reports the crime to the police. What is that? You can get really tricked with this one. Okay, Breda says burglary, Amy says theft. Incorrect, because the crime would be considered burglary if the bicycle had been taken from the enclosed garage. Listen to me. I want to tell you this. I disagree with that. I called it burglary because it happened in there. But you know what, guys? It depends on what the jurisdiction on the property. Yeah, it depends on the jurisdiction that they use to get this, and that's the whole thing in a nutshell about it. And we try to teach you, So theft Yes, that's universal. However, burglary in some jurisdictions where the yard, because it's hit on the lawn, on the front lawn. So, that's, I'll try again, nothing. Okay, so I'll try again. I'll do what she said, and then we get it. Okay, without consent. So it depends, one last one. A 25-year-old man is attending a party inside his friend's house. Well, that's a good question. Enclosed. Um, I I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it has to be enclosed. It's just private property. On most residences who have yards, and then they have a sidewalk, and then they have an outer yard. Does the outer yard count as their property generally, yes or no? Amy says yes. What do you think, Breda? City Street. Yeah. Generally, the rule is up to that sidewalk and on the other side. Now, again, I'm telling you, that's the thing about it. It's hard to generalize the law in a situation, but we can give just a general rule here. Some people could argue, okay, if an injury happened on the grass outside, like for example, we had trees. We had trees that were in our yard, and then the sidewalk, and then there was a tree out. And the tree on the outside, on the other side of the sidewalk, fell on a car, and we weren't held responsible for it because it was the city's tree. So it depends. Like I said, again, a 25-year-old, okay, man is attending a party inside his friend's house. While inside, the man breaks into a locked bedroom and steals jewelry. The crime is discovered the next day, and the victim reports it to police. What type of crime is it? This is a real good one here. I don't see forced entry as one of them. Okay. Okay. First of all, if you're armed robbery, you're not going to get it. See? This is not armed robbery because the jewelry was not taken with force. Okay. And one of you said burglary, or I think you did, and that's the correct one. Because remember, this is a burglary because the man didn't have permission to be inside the locked bedroom. So that's it. Okay? It wouldn't be strong arm and it wouldn't be theft. That people would tend to want to pick theft, but it's really burglary because it's in another area. So anyway, that's that. So right, right. That then you get into uh, strong arm and armed robbery and that kind of stuff. Okay. So then that's it. And so now the ultimate thing, people, is do not forsake the last part of this. I'm getting ready to adjourn in a minute, give you something I want you. Practice quiz. So, these are good because this is exactly how you're going to see them on the quiz. The unlawful entry. And by the way, you do know that this course has two quizzes, right? You're aware of that, right? I mean, two real quizzes. Do you know when they are? What weeks? 3 and 6 is correct because it's like midterm and final, not week 5. Week 3 and week 6, exactly. So that's, and you should be aware that the quiz that's going to take in week 3 should cover information from what weeks? There we go. And then the same thing for the other one, 4, 5, and 6. So it's like it's the 2 midterms because it is midterm. Okay. All right. Remember your 5.5. It says 5.5, but actually, you know what I mean. We say that. And the reason why we say 5.5 is because your week starts in the middle, at the beginning, and then it ends at the end. So our quarter ends September 14th. Okay. We started on a Wednesday. Okay. Unlawful entry into the dwelling of another without consent with intent to commit a robbery is known as. Very good. You didn't go for the trick. It is correct. That's correct. So most people want to say burglary. I said no. Unlawful entry of another without consent with intent to commit a robbery. So if it's robbery, what does that mean to you when you see that word robbery? What does that tell you right away? Is your brain getting tired there? Your brain is getting tired there. When you see robbery, it has to be from the person of an individual. And they gave you in the scenario without consent with intent to commit a robbery. So they told you that that word robbery, one of the elements of robbery is from the person or threat. Got it? Which makes it different from burglary. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm done with that. So you wanna do those on a person exactly, or on a person, or a person's present right there and imminently. So yeah. So you gotta see. We tell people and we tell students, try to make sure that you don't overthink the situation, but you think about it as, okay, that really wasn't a trick, but you were really given a clue, and right there, and it went right past you there, and you have to be able to do that. That's why you need to get rest before you take a test. Is that true or not? Yeah. I hear you. That goes for both of us. I started grading papers, and I go, so I've got to stop. I can't do this because I'll end up giving somebody with a perfect score or F, and then they'll send me, hey, professor, how come I got all the elements of the rubric, but you put 10 points out of instead of 100? My bad, you know. So anyway, all right. So that's the end. And so I want to give you a word. Burglary. That's it. So give me that word and you get your points. All right. So I'm going to say good night. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out. You know, it's really, I think that you guys, and I tell my students this, I said that a lot of times students only want to go and do the work on stuff that they're getting a grade for. I tell them, I said, no, you got to try to do stuff that prepares you for the grade as well. And so that's my policy. That's been my practice. And that's how I made it the way I did it. So I'm going to say good night to you guys. I'll be sending out an archive of this, and hope to see you guys next week. Thank you both. Good night.